Are now live and recording, and I wanted to welcome Mr. Michael Nettemeyer has joined me this morning as my co-host, and I really appreciate that. So, Mr. Michael Nettemeyer, say hello to the group.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you who are new to this call, or for those of you that are joining us on my YouTube page. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael. How long have you been in the business?
I got licensed basically at the end of 2005, right out of college. Started doing a lot of property renovation and that pretty much immediately, and then shifted back into selling a couple of years ago. So this will be our third full year of just completely focusing on listing and selling homes.
And building a big team, aren't you?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And Michael's actually one of my coaching clients as well with Pura Vida. But Michael, in the second year you're in business, full year, how much business did you close last year in numbers?
We did right around just under 80 transactions and right around 10 million in volume.
And what's your goal for this year?
We're looking to do about 107 transactions at about 18 million.
Yep, and I know you will. I know you will for sure. And Michael is with Keller Williams, one of my favorite brands. There's lots of brands out there, love them all. I ran a big Keller Williams office, so I love the brand. So how do we reach you in St. Louis? I know you're in St. Louis. If we wanted to send you a referral, because I get clients and agents from all over the country that listen to these webinars, how do we reach you?
You could call into our office, which is area code 636-534-8220, or you can send me an email directly to Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, at the Net Group. It's THENETT group.com.
Awesome. So again, thanks so much. So Michael and I were just on the phone. We talk several times a week. I coach his buyers agents team, so we talk for about 30 minutes, and then we meet for an hour every week about leadership. And we got to meet again this morning right before this call about the shifting market. You know, shift happens. I just love to say that. Shift happens. And we are in a seller's market in most parts of the country. Now, you know, what you hear on a national level and what happens on a local level are two completely different things, aren't they, Michael?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
And even and we'll just use St. Louis for an example, even if you go St. Louis City versus St. Louis County versus St. Charles County, three completely different micro markets, right?
Yes, they are.
Even to the point where you could go into, you know, a school district, and this side of Manchester, this side of the highway is different than that side of the highway. I mean, it's really, guys, real estate is so local, it's not even funny. So what Michael and I were talking about, and what I have on the screen that might be hard for you to see, is just a sheet that I prepared when I first got into real estate. I've been in real estate for about 10 years, mostly always was in leadership. But I did sell real estate for a short time with Pru, and I put together these questions for a listing agent when I was going to present an offer, because I was a brand new agent and I didn't know any better. And I know Michael and I were talking before we all joined you on the call this morning was, Michael, how many times do you get an offer? And this isn't rhetorical, this is a question, really. Michael, how many times, and I know you carry a fair amount of listings, 25 up to 40 sometimes is what your goal is, but how many times do you get an offer from an agent without nary one question? Just comes over the fence.
Yeah, it happens quite often. I actually just got one, the most recent one was on Friday, last Friday, a week ago. It just pops up in your email and you have no idea. They didn't call, they didn't say who they were, who their buyer was, anything like that. We obviously knew that they showed the property from our, the showing service we use, but yeah, there was no communication whatsoever other than an email.
And Kevin and I carried, when we were in St. Louis and selling real estate, at one time we were just a team with carrying like up to 60 listings, and we'd see it almost every day. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. And the fact that it's still going on doesn't make any sense to me. So back in the day, when I first got into real estate, I wrote these questions, and the questions have changed because the market's changed. So one of the things is, and guys, and I know you probably you probably go, I can't see it. My point is I wrote them down. I created a system. And here's the first thing I had on here was always call the listing agent before writing an offer. And I would share this. When I was at Prudential, I shared this with other agents. And I would write down who the listing agent's name is and when I called them and how long I spoke to them for. And I always pulled their numbers first. Michael, why do you think I pulled their numbers?
Just wanted to see maybe how much experience they have and what they, kind of who you're dealing with.
Yeah, because it's funny. Michael and I were talking yesterday. I said it's funny that I can be in the business for 10 years and have only sold 10 houses, or I could be in the business for 10 years and sold, 50 houses a year, or I could be a brand new agent and have never sold a house. I don't know which is worse, because the agent has been around for a long time, has an old school way of thinking, and maybe isn't progressive and has an attitude and an ego, because this is what Kevin and I heard when we were in St. Louis. We'd be presenting offers or what have you, and we'd be doing whatever we do. Nobody ever heard of Kevin. He just came out of nowhere. Do you know who I am? We heard that. Really? Like it matters? Do you know who I am? Do you know who you're dealing with? Really? You're going to talk to me like that? The point is that, guys, when you're presenting an offer, pull their numbers. Now, I know there's some top agents in St. Louis, guys, that use, for those of you who live in St. Louis, that you go, I know who she is. Okay, I get that. But if you don't know who it is that you're dealing with, pull their numbers. Find out a little bit about them. Are they carrying any other listings? Nope, this is their only one. Oh, crap. So pull their numbers so that you know what you're dealing with. And then, so we call the listing agent, and probably one of the first questions we want to ask, it depends on the market, depends on if you're in a seller's market, a buyer's market, it's a flat market, is the property still available? And one of the tricks we did, Michael, was we always said, look, there's a couple houses out there that we're interested in, and we're considering making an offer. We never made the commitment to making the offer. This all goes back to the language of sales, doesn't it, Michael? Hey, we're going to present an offer to you today. No, we just kind of acted really cool about it. Hey, we may be considering writing an offer. We've got one or two homes that that my buyer really likes, and I was calling you today because I had a couple questions. They go, oh, okay. So we acted like, oh, we don't act like we're in love with the house. You got to just kind of be cool. Guys, be cool. Hey, we're thinking about presenting an offer, and I was just wondering, if it's you're in a hot market, are you working any offers right now? You'd want to know that, wouldn't you, Michael? What else would you ask, Michael? Let's get more interactive here. What other questions would you, when you pick up the phone and you call that listing agent, what other questions would you ask about the seller?
Yeah, I would ask if, basically, first I'd ask, are there any other offers on the property? I've got someone interested in maybe putting an offer in, and are there any current offers on the property? And then find that out. Have you had any offers on it yet? And then I would ask, so why is the seller selling? And sometimes realtors won't give that away. Sometimes they will. So it is worth asking, because that right there, you can find out a big part of their motivation there. If we know they're moving, some realtors will just give that away. Oh, they're moving. They have to be out in 30 days.
Right.
Well, now you know that they're going to be more of a motivated seller than someone that's just kind of testing the market.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of tie that down a little bit, because we're all about alternative choices, aren't we? So here's what we know. Typically when we ask questions, and Michael and I talked about this yesterday, most people really do want to answer a question, especially if you give them alternative choices. So Michael, maybe if we worded that question differently, because I have on here, on my sheet, where's the seller going? Well, what if we asked it a little bit differently? Is the seller staying local, or are they moving out of town? Now, as we know with alternative choices, most people will pick one or the other. They won't say no. They would say, if you say, hey, I just was curious, just act really nonchalant about it, I was just curious, are they staying local, or are they moving out of town?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Local. Yeah, it goes back to alternative choices, and really start thinking about how we ask questions. It really is about how do we get the answers that we're looking for, asking questions a little bit differently than just being direct. Because being direct isn't always the solution. I know I'm direct. I have to learn to not be so direct and stop and ask questions in such a way that people will want to answer them and really engage. Because what you tell that listing agent is, look, if we do write an offer, we want to present an awesome offer. And if we just use the example of, and I love, there's a book out there called Tell It to Win, and I love to tell stories. And Michael knows my story. My son listed his house in St. Louis, and my brother represented him, and because I'm here in Austin, of course, and my brother represented him in the listing and pricing of his home, and he paid $200,000 for it in 2007. He put it on the market 2013, February, for $200,000, $199,000. Guess what? We had 12 showings, first 48 hours, 5 offers, first 24 hours. And we went over way over list price, and we appraised way over list price. But that wasn't probably the most important thing to my son. It wasn't the price. He would have been okay selling it for 202. He would have. What was more important to him was he can't find a house to live in. So one of the things Michael and I talked about this morning is, what are the other questions, Michael, that we need to be asking the listing agent? So if they are staying local, could we just say, have they found their home?
Yeah, I think that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we know because we know, whatever the agent's name is that we understand the market that we're in right now, and we were just wondering, have they already found their home? And if they have, great. If they haven't, there's an opportunity there, isn't there? That's the other question. So with my son, going back to, having great stories to tell, people love to hear stories, is really what was more important to him was he hadn't found his house yet. Just wrote last weekend. So just wrote last weekend. It's been under contract, closing first week in April, I think. But what was more important to him was doing a lease back. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that too, doing a seller lease back now.
Yep.
Because you don't want to push the closing out 3 months or sometimes even greater. You want to close on it really as soon as possible and then do the lease back so the transaction's closed then.
Yeah, and this is Michael and I were talking about this morning. Never, ever, ever, and I just had a rule when we owned, the Independent in St. Louis and when we had our team in St. Louis as well, is that we never did closings more than 60 days out. And you go, why? Because people die. They do. We've had people die on us. People get divorced. People have babies. People get new jobs. All sorts of things happen. So if you've got somebody, if you have somebody, and you're the listing agent, I want you to think about this from both sides. If you're the listing agent and somebody presents an offer and they say, well, we'll just give you a longer closing date so they can find a place to live. No. Close and fund. Close and fund. First of all, you can't go right contingent. For if you've got the seller, you can't go right contingent on a closing. Why would you want to do that? Close and fund and go right non-contingent. Otherwise, they're never going to find a house, are they, Michael? If they're trying to write contingent on it, because contingent upon the sale is different than contingent upon the closing, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
At least it is in St. Louis. I don't know all your rules and all the laws across the state and what have you across all our our fine states in this country. But close and fund, stay and move on. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're going to have more bargaining power too when you negotiate on the sale of their new home, because now, like you said, you're not contingent upon the sale of their home. Right.
So a couple of the questions that we would ask is, where's the seller going? Are they staying local, or are they moving somewhere else? That's a big good to know. You give them alternative choices. They're going to answer that question better than where's the seller going. And that's where really true. If you just ask great questions in such a way that really, I'm just really interested. We want to make the best possible offer we can. What's more important to the seller? The closing date? The price? What other stipulations are there? Does the seller have, we've got what closing date does the seller want in best case? Why wouldn't you ask them that? No other agent's going to ask that listing agent that. What? Well, we want to write a great offer. Because we understand the market just like you understand the market. We know that it's Parkway South, it's $200,000, and there's 13 available and 11 under contract. I'm a smart realtor. I can figure out supply and demand. I understand this market. So we want to write the best offer we can. So what kind of closing date are you looking for? I don't know. I've never really even asked them that. Well, maybe you should go find that out. But what kind of closing date are they looking for? Have they found their new home? How do I reach you if we want to write an offer? Ask some other filler questions too. Don't just ask about the specifics about the seller. Maybe start out with, how do I reach you if we do want to present an offer? What kind of response time is it? If you can hear my dog, I apologize. Sorry. So how do I reach you if you want to present an offer? Where do I send it to? That's important, Is the seller in town? Do they need a longer response time? And Michael had a great point this morning, too, when we were talking about not all sellers are single-family owner-occupied properties, are they, Michael?
No, not at all.
No, and I hadn't really, given that a lot of consideration until he and I talked. That different sellers are. You got your investors with tenants, which is, in my opinion, I would never. Here's what I told my agents when I owned Kelsey Cottrell Realty Group in St. Louis. We're not gonna write on short sales unless we know that listing agent has been a great negotiator and done maybe 10, or has a third party in place. And 9 times out of 10, we don't really want to deal with investment property that's got a tenant in it because it's just a pain to get them out. You probably haven't thought about these kind of things, but why would you put your buyers in harm's way? So we didn't write on short sales, unless we knew, and we had a short sale guy in our office. And we're still, if you Google short sales in St. Louis right now, Michael, we've come up #1 for the resource. So it's awesome. So I've got a guy in St. Louis in place. I just refer all that business to. Okay. So going back to Michael, not all sellers are owner-occupied. You've got your investors with tenants. You've got your owners. You got your short sales. Oh, Michael, let's talk about short sales. So,
yeah,
Michael, what you and I – yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just saying those are, very, very important. I was telling you this morning that we showed one last night and called the realtor today, and there's already 6 offers on it. And so you really need to find out, how much experience does that, if that realtor is going to be the one negotiating the short sale, how much experience do they have in doing that? Because if they don't, and they don't have a proven track record, chances of that property ever closing are probably pretty small. If it is a third party that's negotiating, find out who that is and look into, like here in St. Louis, we have a couple pretty reputable people that do short sales. So if it's with them, you have a high probability that the property will close.
Right.
So finding out those questions is very, very important. And finding out how far along in the process are they? Did they just put it on the market and they're just fishing for offers, or have they already talked with the bank and got an agreed upon price?
Mm-hmm. So those are all great questions.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into it. I think that I had a former team member last year. He sent an offer over on a property, didn't call the realtor, just emailed the offer, never followed up, didn't do anything. And the client, and then he wouldn't call the client back either. Long story, but the client ended up calling me. The realtor never even received the offer, knew nothing about it. So you can't just depend on sending an email that it's going to go through and that they're going to, you have to do your due diligence, and that's part of our job is negotiating. So definitely pick up the phone before you submit an offer and ask these questions and find that stuff out.
Well, I think, and it's a shame the public doesn't realize this, that 80% of our value on PFA and that number, comes from negotiations. It comes from being a strong negotiator. It comes from, Alex Hyen, who's on my Tuesday calls when we talk about internet leads and just buyer lead conversion and what have you. And we're talking about a lot of this subject on my Tuesday calls as well. So if you haven't been there, join me on Tuesday. It's a whole different webinar just for about 30 minutes, just about internet and a lot of stuff about Real Geeks because we love the Real Geeks platform. But Alex was talking about, other things that he was doing was he was writing contracts with really short response times, because they are getting into huge multiple offer situations. Now, the short response times, people are like, I don't, we used to be really careful about it. That's all we asked. One of the questions we asked the listing agent on this particular call is, what sort of response time are you looking for? But wouldn't you want to tie up? Wouldn't you want to write an awesome offer, maybe give them the opportunity to do a lease back? Write it in the contract. Write it in the contract. And then close up the response time. Look, we're going to write you a great offer, and I know we might be getting into multiple offer situations. Maybe that's the second call. First call is you just ask questions, and maybe just as you're getting ready to send it over the fence, that you say, look, this is what we prepared. Because I know what's funny is that we would have agents that we go, we're submitting an offer. Well, can you give us a little bit of information? No. They were too chicken, I know this to be true, to even talk to us about what the offer was going to look like. No, we just want to send it over.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had that too.
Because they're cowards. Because if they were going to argue with them on the phone. But the point is that, my gosh, be proud of your offer. You guys, you're putting your buyers in harm's way. If you're not proud of that offer, if you're just throwing it over the fence, can you give us a little, a hint? Closing date, price? Nope. They wouldn't tell us. So my point is that Alex, I know what he's doing in Omaha is he's writing them on these really, really short response times. And he's made some people, he made somebody mad. He was at RE/MAX, and he made somebody mad because she asked for a 4-hour response time. Because he knew it was a multiple offer situation. He knew his offer was awesome. He wanted to get it under contract. And the broker got mad at him and said, how dare you put my seller, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I represent the buyer. I don't really care about the seller, you know? I mean, I do, but I don't. I represent the buyer. And my way I keep my buyers out of harm's way is I want to lock this up. Either you respond in 4 hours or you don't. Okay. Now, I know here in Texas, in Austin, but the way I understand the contracts, there is no response time limits. I'm like, oh, my God, how do you get people under contract, you know? So Michael, yeah, really, this morning we had some great conversation about short sales. How many have you gotten approved? Who's your third-party negotiator? Any other contracts? Where are we at in the process? Investors and flipping, they can be another one, too, that can be, you know, asking the investor maybe completely different questions. You've got a vacant piece of property. You know, they're probably highly motivated. But what other questions would you, Michael, you're an investor. You own a bunch of houses. That's part of your money building, your wealth building process for yourself. Is as an investor, what kind of questions would I ask you? I know it's vacant. It's obvious. You know, closing date's probably not that important to you. But what other questions could I be asking an investor? Like, well, how many other properties do you own? Or I don't know, Michael. What would you want to hear if you were selling one of your properties? If you were flipping, I know you're buying and holding right now. But if you were flipping, what kind of questions would I ask you? Do you know?
If I were flipping property, basically the biggest thing on that really is, especially with if your seller's gonna purchase any property where there's been a very large scale renovation, you obviously want to make sure all the correct permits were pulled. There are a lot of people that will cut corners.
That's a good
so you
question.
can actually do some due diligence at City Hall and you can find out how many permits were pulled on the property. If there was a full plumbing update and the whole house was rewired, things like that, you certainly want to find that out.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. The other thing I want to make sure, too, is that agents don't realize, and some agents flip out about this, and I know this to be true from being in St. Louis and from coaching agents all over the country, that one of the things we say is closing and possession will be the same day. Will that work for your seller? Because I tell you, I was working with agents when I was in St. Louis that they couldn't figure out, how to fund and close and get their seller out of the house into their new house in the same day. Couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's happened more than once. This isn't just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It's happened more than once. Because maybe, what if they have 2 semi-trucks full of clothes and 5 of furniture and belonging, and they've got 5 kids and blah, 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 and it's a nightmare, and they're reloading out. You know, we want to close and fund and take occupancy the same day. Does that work for your seller? Or maybe they just need to do a 2-day lease back. You know, maybe they need to close. I mean, I've sold houses where they had 2 semi-trucks, big houses, you know, that I brought the buyer, and the seller's in there, and they're reloading out, and there's 2 semi-trucks in the driveway. And we didn't close until noon. And we're not going to fund until 4, which means I can't fund and move in until the next day anyway, because I'm not funded. How many times, Michael, if you heard stories, and here's another thing, guys, too, never, ever, ever close on a Friday. Why, do you ask? How many times have you funded at 4 o'clock? You thought you were going to fund at 4 and you don't. And the listing agent and the seller, there's no way you're getting the keys this weekend. And I know your truck is loaded, and I know that the kids are hungry, and it's 95 degrees. And you have no place to live because we didn't fund on a Friday at 4 o'clock. No, I can't give you the keys. I can't give you the garage door opener. No, you can't put your stuff in the garage. No, we can't. They won't give me the keys. Now they have no place to live for 2 days. It's happened to me, I don't know, I would say 5 times. Just promoting the company and haven't done all the transactions we've had. But why would you put your buyers in harm's way? Never close on a Friday. That should just be a rule in the industry. Never close on a Friday. Close on a Thursday. Close on a Monday. Never close on a Friday. And never close the day before Thanksgiving. Never. Can you imagine? Now I'm funding on Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday. Friday happens to be, maybe that's not a good example, a national holiday. The title companies are closed. The banks are closed. Nobody's funding. It's Thanksgiving week, and they have nowhere to live for 4 days. I put people up in hotels. Had to. So just as a rule, never close on Friday. It should be in your buyer consultation. Here's another thing. We're going to keep you out of harm's way, and I'm working on the new buyer consultation for this hot market, is we're never going to close on Friday. Can I tell you why? And I don't know that 90% of the other realtors that are out there would think about this.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that, I think that's very important not to, the Friday especially, because, that stuff does happen, and you don't want them, it's not good.
No, it's just these simple little things that you guys got to think about. How do you keep your clients out of harm's way? So I just think of going back over, where's the seller going? Are they staying local? Are they moving out of town? Do they have a place to move? Would a seller lease back? Would that appeal to them? No other agents are asking them this. So kind of in closing, and there's just a few more other questions I want to say, and then we're going to talk a little, just for 30 seconds, about this buyer boot camp I'm going to be putting together, is that also, guys, when you're calling the listing agent, I always ask them about, are there any inclusions or exclusions that somehow didn't make it on the contract? That dining room fixture, that dining room, chandelier that's in there, I know you said something that belonged to her grandmother and they wanted that to be excluded. Is there anything else that needs to be included or excluded? Get that on the contract. Ask that when you make that phone call. Ask about, in San Luis, Michael, I always ask if they had a recent survey.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Do you have a survey? Because unless something's changed, we could use a survey in St. Louis, a stake survey, a $500 survey, as long as it was less than 10 years old and they hadn't made any major improvements. So it saves my buyers a lot of money if I ask for the survey up front. Wow, just ask for it. And ask for it in the contract. Ask for it in special agreements. So to provide survey from June of 2012. Get it in the contract. Ask about, this is where in the contract too. Well, of course, I could do hours and hours on just writing contracts. But ask about that. Ask about, do you have a survey that my buyer can use? Are there any other inclusions or exclusions that I need to know about? Like, are the curtains going in the master bedroom? If it's a condo, making sure you're asking about the condo docs. So this is amazing, guys. Remember, I'm just going to say this once in this call. We all get paid the same amount of money, regardless of how much experience we bring to the table. And the unfortunate thing is that 80% of the people that are in this business, and we know this to be true because we know their numbers, don't know what they're doing. So our goal as a buyer's agent representing a buyer on the listing side is to keep our buyer out of harm's way, regardless of who we're dealing with on the listing side. And I think it was one of our agents, top agents in St. Louis, a friend of mine on Facebook, and she said, isn't it ridiculous that I've been in the business for 20 years, negotiated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of contracts, and somebody brings me an offer who's never written on a house before, and they get paid the same amount of money that I get. My 6%, 3% goes to them, 3% goes to me, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous that there are no standards in this business. So your goal is to keep people out of that. Nothing else matters other than keeping your buyer and your sellers out of harm's way. And you do that by asking great questions and setting great expectations. So today, questions for listing agent or writing an offer. I'm going to finesse this, tweak it, make it better. I'm going to be launching a buyer agent boot camp in April for buyers in this market that has shifted. And there's going to be money attached to this boot camp, and I'm working on what that looks like right now. But it is going to be 6 weeks, 1 hour each week. I'm redoing the buyer consultation, guys, because it's changed, hasn't it? I'm redoing the questions you ask the listing agent when you're getting ready to present an offer because that's more important now than it ever was before. I'm redoing and improving and tweaking the buyer conversion scripts for converting internet leads and sign callers. Because there's different questions we need to be asking. So I'm really excited about that, and then we'll be announcing more information about that in the next few weeks. But Michael, I want to thank you so much for being my guest host. Michael's probably on here once about every 6 weeks or so. Just I'm like, hey, you want to hang out with me on the call on Friday, and he's happy to join me. And I really do appreciate your insight. You were very helpful, Michael, with me this morning before we even got on the call. So anything else that you want to add, Michael? Give us your phone number one more time, babe.
Yeah, it's 314-761-4057, and that's actually my cell phone, direct line.
Cool. Okay. Michael, proud to be in business with you. Thanks so much for being with us on the call today. We are ending promptly at 10:30. I want to thank you guys so much. Thank you all for being here on the call with us today. Go out and make it happen. Take a day off this weekend, guys. Take a day off. And, Michael, we'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.